Hello and welcome to a special episode of A Polite Notice, a single seat podcast. I'm Becca and I'm here today with Dan to yap about a very special part of motorsport with an exceptionally special guest. Please welcome the legend that is Jennie Gow, BBC Radio 5 Live's Formula One correspondent since 2011 and author of amazing, sometimes upside down books.
Hello.
Hi.
I have said upside down book with me. Here it is.
Do you know what? I've gone through a lot of the books and I've never found one that's upside down. You literally are the only people I know of who have an upside down book.
Limited special edition. She holds a special place in our little podcast heart. So, hello Jennie, thank you so much for joining us today. This is so exciting for us.
Oh, you're more than welcome, and it's equally as exciting for me.
So, this is a question we ask all of our guests. What is your earliest memory of racing?
Oh, I thought you were going to just ask what was my earliest memory. That would be my earliest memory of racing. That's a really good question. I suppose the one that stands out most, it wasn't the earliest that I was into motor racing, but it was the one that I can remember at this very old age that I'm at, having had a stroke. And it sticks out because I was on the phone to my friend at the time and we were both watching the race. And it was the race that Ayrton Senna died at. And we were watching it on the phone. And I remember the crash and just talking to my friend going, "Oh my God, did you just see that?" And he was on the other end of the phone watching the same race. And it just still resonates with me, the fact that I was on the phone to him, we watched it together, we watched it unfold together, and I suppose it was so dramatic that it kind of outweighs everything before that, if that makes sense. But yeah, it was just a very strange day.
Yeah, I saw the a clip of that day was going around again on social media a little while ago, and people were focusing on the fact that Adrian Newey there was just a shot of him in absolute tears because he clearly knew at the moment that this was a horrifically life-changing crash that actually meant we lost a driver. So,
and weirdly, of course, if you look up about the crash, if you didn't know what happened or you haven't seen it, Adrian Newey was pivotal to that, and he was actually in a court case, a manslaughter court case. And I found out more about it when I was writing the book, and that whole side effect of the crash and how it affected Adrian Newey, and it still affects him as the man who designed that car. And they've never been able to prove that it was his fault. Read the book, it's got it all in it. But it was, it was something that stuck with me from the experience of watching it and then writing about it. You see things in a different light.
It's definitely one of the most infamous moments in motorsport. And I think it's also the pinnacle where the safety regulations started to come in more and more. We're seeing it even to this day, everything from the halo in the mid-2010s to what they're trying to do with the new regulations in 2026 as well. It's a very different sport than what it used to be. Some of it has taken away from the excitement of it all, but most importantly, it's focusing on the driver's safety and also the spectators. I couldn't imagine what would happen if these Grand Prix stands weren't properly protected from a car crashing into it. We've seen even videographers at times or people taking pictures or recording them being so close to the barriers when someone would just come crashing into a corner. It's very scary. We love the entertainment of it, but equally, we don't want to see something like that happen again anytime soon, if ever again.
I think we've learned a lot of lessons from the things that have happened in the past. And that is one of the things that I think is really fundamental about F1, is that it learns from the incidents that have happened and moves forward and always takes those in mind. So whenever we lose someone on track, off track, in the crowd, you go forward and you go, okay, we must do better than that. F1 must do better than that. And they put in place all these regulations. And some people think, oh, well, it's over-regulated now. But actually, it's just regulated so that hopefully, going forward, no one is in that situation where they're in the crowd and something happens to them and they die. That shouldn't be a part of motor racing. It's dangerous, but it should be as safe as possible for the people who come to enjoy it.
On a brighter note, So then we move away
We
from.
went straight into doom and gloom. I'm so sorry.
That's absolutely fine. It's sometimes the case.
It's part of the history.
It
Yeah.
is. It is part of the history of the sport. When did you figure out that you wanted to work in media, especially focusing on motorsport and Formula One? How did your journey come about in that?
I think I always knew I wanted to work in media, just always. And it was compounded by the fact that I was watching a news piece on TV, and it was with a journalist called Martin Bell, who was a very famous journalist turned politician. And he was in front of a row of people, and it was in Ethiopia at the time of the famines there. And they were all digging this trench. And I remember it so vividly. And he was in front of it in his white suit that he always wore. I think it's probably cream. And he was talking about the famine and how desperate times were. And I turned around to my mum and just said, I don't understand. Why is he not just helping make that trench? Why is he just standing in front of it and talking about it? So she explained, I was quite young, but she explained how being a journalist is bringing the news to people so that more people are aware of it. And it will change more people's lives by him standing in front of the trench and talking about it than if he just built the trench. That really hit home. And I just thought, that's what I want to do. I want to tell people news and change people's lives because of it. Now, I initially wanted to be a war correspondent. I would have been terrible. I mean, I cry at everything. I'm not very good around blood. Can't cope with people dying. There's a litany of things that it would never work. And I found that out when I was about 18 and a serious crash happened in front of me on the road. And unfortunately, one of the people involved lost their lives. And I was there. I was like first on the scene. And I was a journalist. And I found myself really torn as what should I do? And it was at that point I thought, yep, it's not going to work for me. So I then deferred to my second passion, which was sport, and trying to change the world a little bit by coming in and being a sports journalist. And that's how I suppose I started and qualified as a journalist. And here I am a million years later.
So my original background is in politics and international relations. And one of my dream careers was also war correspondence. Marie Colvin is still one of my all-time favorite writers, and the way she humanizes the story. But very similarly to that, as soon as I started getting into her books and into her history, I was just like, I don't have the capacity for this. I don't have the bandwidth for it. It's a completely different beast to what we're seeing in sports journalism, just humanizing those stories and making sure you actually get it right so that everyone relates to it or you paint the right picture of what's going on. Entertainment, on the other hand, is so much easier sometimes, most of the time.
I think it takes a very special person to be a war correspondent. And if you ever see someone doing that, you kind of have to look at them and appreciate what's actually going on around them. Not just that they're being a correspondent in a place which is being bombed, but everything else. I mean, again, this podcast has taken a severe turn for the downward side of things, but it's a phenomenal talent and a skill. And I take my hat off to them.
I think the ability to tell stories in a compelling way is a skill in and of itself, and being able to apply that in any life circumstance, whether it be something horrible like war or something fun like Formula One, is an amazing skill. And I guess that kind of leads us on to our next question, is like, how did you kind of break in? How did you first find yourself in I guess, radio?
So radio is my first love. And I love the immediacy of it. The fact that you can be anywhere reporting about anything and you can do it straight away. You do not have to wait for a TV camera, a producer, a sound man or woman. All of those things that come with TV that make it great, but it's not instant. It's not immediate. And I love the intimacy of radio. So I qualified as a journalist and volunteered or did some work experience at the BBC. And from those periods of work experience where I just said yes to everything. So I was there first thing in the morning and I would leave well after late. and then do the same thing the next day. And I just said yes to every experience I could, and offered myself to every different department and just tried to absorb everything because it was so magical. I remember the first time I walked into BBC Television Centre in Wood Lane. I mean, it just was a magical experience. And I was actually, going to work there. And yeah, it was just a dream. And I tried out everything. And my first job that I got was actually working at Television Centre as a production secretary. And you might think, why was I a production secretary when I just qualified as a journalist? Actually, it's a great building block and a foundation to knowing all these different sports people and being able to talk to everyone from Muhammad Ali, Alex Ferguson, David Beckham, all of these people I was exposed to as a production secretary. And it gave me a really good building block and foundation to go further. And I was very lucky. I worked under a guy called Philip Burney, who is now uber important in BBC Sportland. And we sat together with one of the BBC newspapers and went through all the different jobs that were available at the time. And together we picked out the ones that we thought would work the best. And I ended up getting a job down at BBC Radio Solent. So my first job on air was just as a BA, they called it, broadcast assistant, doing all the different roles down at BBC Radio Solent. And it makes me sad that BBC Radio isn't what it was. And young journalists coming through don't get the same opportunities that I was fortunate enough to get, just because I did a bit of everything. And I loved it, and it taught me so much. And it's a bit sad that that's not there for everyone now.
So just kind of personally, me and my parents we drove around a lot because my mum works for our rugby club as their photographer. And so we were travelling a lot, and we'd be in the car and she'd always have Radio 5 Live on, always. So hearing your voice is just, it's very reminiscent of, here's what happened in qualifying today on a Saturday afternoon and things like that. And I think it is a real shame because you're right that radio it's a wonderful way of communicating information to people, particularly when they're not, sat stationary.
And who's sat stationary anymore?
Exactly.
Not many people. I was lucky with 5 Live. I left the BBC, went to commercial radio and ended up at Sky Sports News presenting their updates. Then I got a phone call from the BBC again saying, do you want to come and present MotoGP? And I mean, it was on BBC. I was taking over from Susie Perry, so I knew there were massive shoes to fill. But I said, yeah, okay, I'll give it a go. And that led to a phone call saying, do you want to come and cover some 5 Live F1 reporting gigs that Natalie Pinkham was not able to do? And of course, I said yes, because I always say yes. So I said yes. And my first race for the BBC was the Canadian Grand Prix in 2011. Now, I don't know if your listeners will be able to remember that far back, but I can tell you it was the longest F1 race ever. It was rain affected, severely rain affected. And Jenson Button came from the back of the field, dead last, to overtake Sebastian Vettel on the last lap of the race and win it. And I cannot tell you the joy that race gave all of us in the pit lane and paddock. And it was something that I was very fortunate to experience.
So one of our other girls on the pod, there's 5 of us in total, Emma, has been watching back during the winter break, especially to kind of cope with it, all of the past Formula One seasons. But the 2011 Canadian Grand Prix is also one of her favorites. And I know that it's being dubbed in the F1 community just as, if not one of the greatest races in Formula One. It was just, I think even to this day, it's the longest one. We expected, watching Brazil last year, all of us together from different corners of the world, we were a bit spread out. We just remember saying, this is never going to end at this point. It was red flag after red flag, but nothing compares to Canada in 2011. I don't think we're ever going to see a race like that, both in the best way, but also in the worst way possible.
I know, thankfully, they learnt their lesson and said, you know what? 4 hours is enough. That's all you're going to get. The very most is 4 hours. I think it was 4 hours and 11 minutes. And I still have my colleague bought me, I mean, this is not going to be very well translated onto a podcast, but he bought me the McLaren that Jenson Button won the Canadian Grand Prix with.
Oh my God.
And it's just a little...
That's so cute.
I don't know what you call it. I'm trying to look desperately. It's a 143 model. And yeah, that sits with me every time I'm broadcasting from home as a reminder of the very first race I had, but also that no matter how long your broadcast is, you're going to have to fill it. And that's a good reminder. Just keep on talking.
Thinking about that during this year's testing, where they had to fill the gap when the lights went out or a tour bus was on track and things like that. They had to find things to talk about. I'm just looking at the Wikipedia page for the 2011 Canadian Grand Prix as well, and the weather is listed as wet at start, very heavy rain later, winds of up to 12 kilometres per hour.
As a pit lane reporter, you are the one of the team who is totally exposed. The others are upstairs in a commentary box laughing because they're kind of probably snug and warm and have shelter, and you're out there in rain, wind, sun, whatever it is, fully exposed. You can't even have an umbrella. So you're just there, come rain or shine. I remember one of the German Grand Prix where everyone spun off and it was totally crazy. Lewis Hamilton won it because I remember him going onto the podium and just looking up, and it was like it was like a concert almost, because the rain started pouring down. But that was ridiculous, and there was thunder and lightning, and we were still outside of it. Crazy. I want to say 2016 Hockenheim, but that might be completely wrong.
Yeah, I think so. I think that was the one. It was basically he controlled it comfortably, but he did have a close call with Nico during that one. So
yeah.
So you say, like, we were just talking about the fact that you've done so many races so far. Is there any moment that kind of sticks out to you as something that you're like, oh, I'll never forget this?
There are so many memorable moments. I've been so lucky in the fact that I've met some amazing people. I've shared some amazing experiences with them. And the F1 community they're there. They're so present. And if you're going around the world with these 3,000, 4,000 people, you quickly learn that it's a very dysfunctional family, but it is a family. And when you need them, they're really there and step up. I think one of the things that will always stick with me is obviously 2021 and the race in Abu Dhabi. And as a pit lane reporter, you want to be in the heart of the news. You're bringing that to the broadcast. That's why you're in essence there, to be able to reflect what is going on the ground every step of the way. And that championship, all of the dramas of 2021, everything that happened going into that race, both Verstappen and Hamilton being equal on points, winner took it all. And the fact that it wasn't won cleanly on track, there were so many decisions after, appeals, and I was right there, broadcasting every single bit of it. And it was the thing of dreams, because you couldn't make it up, could you? That ending, the way it resonated around the world, the way it still does. Yeah, you can't, it was pretty special.
As a Hamilton fan, it was pain. A little bit painful, still is to this day, but I'm hoping for better outcomes with Lewis at Ferrari. Becca and Imane are longtime Ferrari fans, and they told me not to hold my breath for too long.
Oh, that's mean.
It was more manage your expectations. It's Ferrari.
I think you have to do that as a Formula One fan, full stop.
That's true. Yeah.
Manage your expectations. If you're Red Bull, if you're McLaren, whoever you are, whoever you follow, whoever you want to win, certainly at this stage of the season, you have to manage those expectations. Because if you get carried away, the only place that you can end up is in disappointment alley. That's it. It's going to be a tough season. It's going to be a really long season. So yeah, manage those horses. Put them away in the stable.
I'm a big Carlos Sainz fan. So testing, I've had to sit there and go, come on. It's going to be... He won testing last year. He won testing this year, and he was in a much faster car last year in theory. So we learn.
I just have to remind myself it's just testing. It doesn't mean anything. It's just testing, but it also means everything because it's the first time we're seeing these cars perform. So
and everyone is sandbagging.
Exactly. Yeah,
and who knows what the cars are actually going to look like when it comes to the first race.
That is very true. A lot of things could change by then. So we've seen, obviously, Formula One move from BBC to paid services. More recently, we've seen Formula E come back to free services in the UK. How do you think, in particular, that F1 has been impacted by the move to paid services instead of making it a free-for-all watch for spectators?
There's no doubt that the viewing figures have decreased with the move to Sky TV. However, the timing for Sky and the existence of Netflix has worked out beautifully. And more importantly for F1 itself, who are making so much money from broadcast deals right now. And if you look at the commercialization of F1, you can see how much it's grown, how much money there is in F1 now compared to 20 years ago when it was on the BBC. And there's so many contributing factors. But I think having the highlights on free to air is a good step so that at least people can access them. Having F1 TV and more things online, more social media presence, more presence on the f1.com website. That really aged me, didn't it? F1.com website. I'm surprised they didn't put www. at the beginning.
http//
Yeah, exactly. Yes, I think all of that has been fundamental to the increase in fans and therefore money. So I don't think it's hurt it at all. Becca's waving my book around.
I read somewhere very interesting that it cost Sky £200 million per
It's
season.
Down, it could be dollars, who knows?
It's upside down. 200 million a season to broadcast Formula One. And does that just go straight to what, the FIA? F1?
No, not the FIA.
Company?
It goes to FOM,
right?
Which is what Liberty own and what Bernie Ecclestone owned before that. And what he bought, I think, at the beginning of the deal for a silly amount of money, a very small amount of money, and has turned into a multi-billion pound business. So he must have done something right, and Liberty must be doing something right as well.
It also played right into their hands.
If you look around the world, the rights are being sold in every territory and for a lot of money.
It played right in their hands in a way because F1 became a more popular sport as soon as it moved to the paid services platforms. That kind of the engagement with fans increased. We've seen all the clubs around the UK and even globally kind of pick up, making you feel included and more part of the team you support or the drivers you support. So automatically they're going to raise their prices to say, we're not happy with this deal this year. We need to raise it a couple $100 million if you wouldn't mind.
I think also the fact that the BBC is limited by they're using license fee payer money to do things, so they can't do all the flashy stuff that Sky can do and have all the billion graphics. And the BBC Sport app is rubbish for Formula One.
That's true.
my feedback.
I can pass it on.
Please, you can't see who's where. No. There's not just like a live feed of who's where in the race. You have to go and scroll through the feed and try and figure out who's overtaken who.
I'll feed that back to
the
execs at the BBC. I just, for the record, I'm freelance. I cover races and I don't get so involved in the back at base stuff, but I will feed back.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
But maybe in different words.
Yeah, don't say Becca says it's rubbish. For like every other sport, it's really good. But I think just because Formula One, things can happen so quickly and people can change positions 2 times in the same corner, that it must be a difficult thing to try and track.
To be fair, we do enjoy it even when Sky has their little hiccup and we see someone at the bottom of the grid for half a second jump to first, and we just, every time that happens, we just very quickly take a picture of that.
And just for the record, whenever you see something on Sky, and I go into this in the book, it's not Sky, it's the feed that F1 provide.
Yeah.
So the world, for every time the race is on, have exactly the same pictures.
It's the same with like the Olympics and things, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
from the central
Yeah.
broadcaster.
Yeah, because if you could imagine each broadcaster having their own cameras and their own directors and producers, I mean, it just would not work. So you have to combine the product and say, okay, you just have one feed and that goes to everyone. And what they do before and after, that's up to them. And there are a couple of bits where you'll see the Sky jump into a little box and they'll do something else. And those are their pictures most of the time. And they're allowed to interrupt the world feed every now and then. But yes, it's a very measured approach from F1. But mistakes that happen are F1's mistakes rather than Sky's mistakes or Channel 10.
I'm just glad the money doesn't go to the FIA, to be honest.
The FIA have plenty of cash. Plenty of my hard-earned British pounds.
They just penalise drivers and fine them and they've got the money they want.
Exactly.
It's pocket change for some of them.
So we are a female podcast. We are a pink cast, as I like to say. What do you think has been the biggest challenge of covering the man's world of motorsports, especially as a woman?
It's a really good question. No, I for the first time over this winter break, I was asked if I went into my job in F1 because I was a female and wanted to break those gender gaps. And it took me a moment to have a think about that. And no, I never went into F1 because I saw like a hole that I could fill that I would break the mold. I just did it because I loved it. And I'm sure most of the listeners would say the same thing. They didn't find F1 because they were female and thought, oh, I know what I want to do. I want to break into a man's world. Maybe there are people who do that. I don't know. But that wasn't my rationale. I just love the sport and I love all motorsport. And after working in motorsport around the world, it kind of was a natural progression to go to the most elite sport level you could, and that's F1. There are so many challenges. Obviously, being a female in a man's world, everyone speaks to you like a bloke. And I've always spoken like a bloke because I've grown up in hardcore news environments where bants is very accepted. And remember the first place I worked in, there were pictures, like page 3 calendar pictures up on the office wall. And that was just, life. That was how it ran. And I think we've come a long way since then. Doing the programme about grid girls and then the subsequent change in not having grid girls I still reflect on that programme, which I kind of co-produced and presented. And I was very much a neutral voice in that programme and reflecting guests' opinions. But what did I think? I didn't think that it was the right use of females at the time. The females were there and yes, they were earning a wage and representing. However, they weren't allowed to talk to the drivers. They weren't allowed to talk about their brands without prior notification and warning. They were just there to look good and to be that glamour side of Formula One, which for me didn't do us any favours. I would rather see someone on the pit wall or in the garage or speaking as an ambassador reflect our place in the paddock. And I got grief at the time, but I still reflect on that and say it was a good thing. And I think it brought F1 forward a step. And the way it's moving at the moment is great guns. And I'm really pleased that that's happened. But there are still challenges to being a female in an F1 paddock. And I think there will be for a long time until, honestly, the drivers and the senior personnel look at women in a different way. And because of their privilege and the way they've been brought up and because of their fathers and all of that, the stuff that's gone on, they have, I think, quite outdated views of how they view a female. And whilst they might respect race engineers and mechanics, how they view the wider world of females, I think, is slightly out of touch, I suppose. So until there's a sea change at that level, I think it's always going to be more difficult to be female.
I do love, just on the grid girls topic, I do love that they replaced it with grid kids. I've seen so many just young karting and junior drivers. Every time they stand next to the cars or we see them lined up for the anthem or whatever the case is, they're so in awe that they're next to Formula One drivers. And they're so... It emphasizes the fact that we're seeing the sport's future and just the young talent standing there in front of Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen and Fernando Alonso and what was Sebastian Vettel. It just seeing them react like that, given the fact that they're very close to being on the same career path and slowly getting into it and beating the odds. I just love it, because every time I see them, I would react the same way. I am not a karting driver, but I would also just be, yes, that is Lewis Hamilton standing behind me and I am within half a foot of him and I just need to look professional and need to be put together. But I am struggling, because in that scenario I would be maybe an 8 to 12-year-old that's just trying to
walk around on your knees. Tie your shoes to your knees. Thinking about that as well, one of my absolute favourite bits of punditry that happened last year was from Bernie Collins, who is my favourite of the Sky presenting team. We love Bernie at this podcast. We are Bernie stans. And she did a thing, I think it was with Ted, where they just walked around the grid before the race and explained who the random people on the grid were, who, unless you're in, you don't know. Like the marshals and what the mechanics are doing and things. And it was so interesting. And it just proved to me, like, she knows what she's talking about and she's clearly there on merit and because she's an expert in what she does. So hopefully things like that, and women like yourself, like Bernie, who are in the punditry world, get to prove, like, we're here because we love the sport, not because...
And want to talk about it and want to share our experiences and take the listeners or viewers on a journey. And that's where we began, isn't it? This conversation of, why do you want to do what you want to do? Well, we're storytellers. We want to bring you along for the ride. For people who have never been in a paddock, in pit lane, on the grid, I'm taking them with me and I'm their eyes and ears. And, I sense that the smell, the taste, the anticipation before a race. The grid is so special. And I love broadcasting from there every time.
Did you go to F1 75 Live?
I did.
What did you think?
I loved it.
Favourite reveal now.
Who knew?
Quickly, favourite livery, go.
V-carb.
Fair
enough.
They were my second choice. I like pink, so I picked Alpine.
I felt like their presentation was flat.
Which presentation did you like the most?
Which presentation? I would say V-carb as well.
Oh, with Munya Chihuahua.
Yeah.
It was really good.
It was really good. The intro was really funny. He was the right person to do that.
So different. And for a driver pairing, I think, which would potentially struggle in that limelight and saying the right things at the right time. And I thought it was a really great way of saying, we're young, we're cool, we're embracing Gen Z and Alpha, and the branding was spot on for what that team should be. And
the car is fun.
It is.
Like the tiny little bulls. Oh, I love them. I think it's so cute.
So
I also really liked McLaren's presentation where they brought out all the old cars. I just thought that was really cool.
Yeah,
must have cost them a packet to do that as well. Those cars must.
Money's not short around here.
Good point. Did they give you a free drink while you were there?
And some food?
You know what? I have to say, I was there all day. It was press junket, the first time they've ever done something like that. And I thought I was a bit cynical going into the press junket that it would work, and the press junket was cool. They did give us some lunch, but only lunch. And then it got to 8 o'clock. So hungry, but who cares about that? And I thought, I can't go into that arena without, I've just worked solidly for a long time. I need a drink. And that drink happened to be a gin and tonic. And I bought one for Harry Benjamin, my colleague. Do you know how much it was?
I don't even want to think about it.
£23.
Are you
for 2 gin and tonics?
Did they give you a mini helmet with it?
beer. It wasn't even a pint. A beer and one single gin and tonic.
You should have gotten. You can get a mini helmet for the price of that sometimes.
I mean, extraordinary. I won't be offering drinks again anytime soon.
Not at the O2 anyway.
Carelessly balanced them coming into the...
every drop is worth 50p.
No, and I was right in the middle. So not only was I arriving just as the curtain was opening and all of the fanfare, but I then had to ask 10 people to stand up whilst I'm carrying the world's most expensive drinks and not drop them on them or myself. So it was a traumatic start, but what an amazing event. I mean, I'm biased because I walked into an arena expecting the worst and came away thinking, oh my goodness me, that was great. But I was really in it. I mean, I had one of those things that flashed every time, and the colouring, the flashing light every time.
It had it knocked that off Taylor Swift, and I will not stop saying that.
Taylor Swift knocked it off Coldplay, so
that's true. Coldplay was the first one.
Who was your favourite? Machine Gun Kelly, Kane Brown, or Take That?
I think Kane Brown.
Yes, I loved it.
And the fact that Harry Benjamin sitting next to me knew all the words and was singing along. I was like, what? What is this? Magic?
It's a great song.
Could it be magic? Yeah, it was. The whole event was magic.
I guess we'll do it in another 75 years then.
No, I'm expecting them to roll it out more than that.
I imagine it was probably a lot louder when you were in it than we heard on the telly.
My claim to fame is that Laura posted also a TikTok explaining this was an event that was 1 year long in prep, and this is some of the things behind the scenes that you might not have known. This is what time we got there, what time we started rehearsing, and everything else. And one of the comments, I also commented on it, but it was unrelated to the booing, and she replied to my comment. One of the comments was, how loud was the booing? What did you think of when the FIA was booed? And she replied with the little blushing emoji, just being like, I don't know what you mean. And then, let me clarify. The person replied to her being, I thought you were trying not to laugh. She's like, I actually know what you meant. I just didn't want to say.
Yeah, I mean, what is there to say?
At this point, nothing until we actually hear from the drivers.
Yeah, there's been plenty of discourse. Yeah. I don't think we're gonna solve the dramas here.
As we record this, we are 3 days away from the 7th season of Drive to Survive. I personally, it's one of the ways I got into the sport. So I sometimes love it. Lately, not so much. But how did you find recording Drive to Survive? What's your impression of it as a show?
So I was blown away by the first season. That was great. Second season with Ferrari and Mercedes in it, I was like, oh, this is interesting. I thought it was fortunate, actually, that Ferrari and Mercedes didn't want to be in the first one, because it led the producers to go down a different track. They had to look outside the box. They had to go for storylines that weren't centralised around the championship. And I think that's what's led to its success, is that it explores the things that aren't necessarily about the championship or about the fight to win. It's people's experiences of what it takes, what it feels like to be in F1. And I mean, Günther was the standout star of season 1. The crash at Sakir with Romain Grosjean was an unbelievable bit of footage, and the follow-up of that incident and how it all played out, unbelievable. And then you fast forward to 2021 and all of the drama around that. The whole season was so intense. We normally record at the end of a season, so you're kind of cramming things in, and the recording process is quite different, I expect, to how people think it would be. So I pestered a lot in season 1 and 2 the producer to say, look, you should have a female voice. I implore you, I don't care who you choose, just please have someone female to represent and have a voice in there, because most of the speaking is male. And we had Claire Williams, but then she departed the team and there was no one. And I was like, come on, you can do better than having 2 people almost identical in looks speaking as a journalist. I just didn't get it. And this is no offence to Chris Medland, who was in season 1 and 2. I didn't mean to take his spot, but it so happened that they said, you know what? Yeah, we'll use you. And I was thrilled, but I keep going back to the fact I just wanted a female presence. It didn't have to be me. So when season 3 happened, I was over the moon. And the timing of it was great. Post-COVID, and we recorded everything in such a rush at the end of the season. And I think we had some recordings in December in a studio nearish to me. And you sit in a chair, very dark studio with all of the people around you, and this intense light that you've probably seen a million times from people posting that shines down on the side of you. And a producer that asks you questions that are quite leading, but they, they're trying to tell a story and they're trying to fill in the gaps that they don't have. And you have to try and explain over and over again what was happening at, let's say, Ferrari at the time of X, Y, or Z. And you keep on going until they've got the answer they're roughly looking for. And then you move on to the next bit. And sometimes you just end up saying something which they will use. It's gold for them. And I mean, Will Buxton is a master of that because he's done it every year. And he just ends up speaking in these phrases that just work perfectly for Drive to Survive. So it's an experience, and one which I have really enjoyed being part of. And I was part of that until I had my stroke. And I love the people behind it. I love the people and the crew who do such a good job. I can't tell you how hard the crew work behind the scenes of Drive to Survive. Filming, doing the sound. You see these massive booms, and there's just one quite small man holding it. And it's like 6, maybe 10 foot long. And what they do is incredible. So what goes on behind the scenes of that show is as magical as what you see.
To me, it's kind of like the definition of a Formula One soap opera in a way. They do such a good job of telling these kind of narrative arcs. And I think if you watch the season, sometimes you can go, oh, well, they missed this and they missed that. So, well, they've got, 10 episodes? They can't do every race, they can't do every story. So I think, picking and choosing your battles is...
I remember being on the phone to the producer. I was WhatsApping her saying, have you got George? Have you got George at the end of the Bahrain, was it Bahrain Grand Prix, Sakhir? It all blurs into one, but him sitting down, having almost won the race, sitting in for Lewis, and they did the tyre mess up, and I was just like, oh my gosh, they have to feature this. If the cameras aren't there, it's just a disaster. And it was during COVID, so each team had to be bubbled. So you, as a producer or exec, they would choose the team that they were following, and they wouldn't be allowed to go to someone else. They had 2 crews, and that was it. They had 2 teams that they were following, and they didn't have any alternative. So they didn't get George. And I was like heartbroken. I was like, oh my God, how are you going to cover this? And they were like, we're not. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter to our story, because yes, okay, it would have been great to have it, but we don't. We just don't have those pictures, so we can't cover it. And that was that.
Simple as. Another piece of media, we're going back to this bad boy. What inspired you to write How to Read F1? Who's this book for?
Okay, so I had a stroke at the end of 2022, and I couldn't speak, I couldn't read, couldn't write, couldn't do anything. It was like I'd been unplugged and plugged back in as a baby. And if anyone's been affected by stroke, they'll know that it can be truly devastating. So after, I think it was about 6 months, I got an email from the BBC saying, would I be interested in writing a book? And I had to have help to read that email. And I was like, how can I write a book? I can hardly speak. And I certainly haven't opened my laptop yet. But a lovely guy called Richard Baddocks at the BBC said, look, just have a meeting with Nell at Penguin and see what you think. And Nell was amazing. In short, she convinced me that I could definitely do this, even though in my head I was like, I definitely can't. And she said, go away, and it's an A to Z guide. So just go away and try and write some of the letters and, see how you go. And I remember opening my laptop and going, this means nothing to me. I'm sure I did a typing course in some point in my life, but the letters didn't go together. They meant no. So I started with A, and actually it came back to me. And some days it was really hard and some days easier, but I did A and I first. And I sent them off to Nell. And surprisingly, she sent me back a message going, yeah, I'll sign you up. Here's a contract. And I honestly couldn't believe it. And we worked quite closely together. And then she went on maternity leave, and a lovely lady called Katie Smith took over. And she and I edited the book together. I had quite a lot of help when it came to taking words out. Funnily enough, I overwrote. They gave me a target of 45,000 words, and I think I ended up with 60,000. And I thought I'd never finish this book, but actually it just, the words came back, and it was such good therapy for me at a time when my actual NHS therapy was disappearing. All of a sudden I had a book to write, and I had a target to write of 600 words a day. And if I did the 600 words a day, I knew that I could make it to the end of it in time for the deadline. And it was quite a short deadline. So it was challenging. I think I wrote it in 4.5 months in post-stroke recovery while trying to raise a family. So it was chaos, but it was what I needed. And it connected me back with the fan base and the audience that I was missing because I wasn't broadcasting. And it gave me a sense of purpose. And it's given me a sense of real tangible recovery. And it's something I can go, you know what? Not only did I write a book, but I wrote it whilst recovering from a stroke. And it just shows how far you can push yourself and your brain, and how lucky I was as well to be able to recover.
Oh, it's upside down. I keep forgetting
it's upside down.
And then opening it and going, what?
I'm so sorry.
It's my favourite. You will pry this book out my cold, dead hands.
It's the best thing.
But I also should have given you one that, they weren't my books to give away, but I should have given you one that wasn't upside down.
It's in the right order.
Well, that I know, that is the case.
It's a functioning book.
Yeah, it certainly is.
You can turn the pages and everything.
It just makes you look a bit funny when you read it on the tube.
I love whoever did the artwork. Whoever did the artwork did a really, really good job. Some of these drawings are absolutely beautiful. This one of Lewis is one of my particular favourites because it's so beautiful.
Yeah, he did.
And I loved the book. It's really nice because I've been a Formula One fan for, it feels like forever. It's not been forever. And so you feel like you know a lot of things. And then you read, someone who does know everything, it seems, writing about it. And you go, oh, okay, yeah, no, I forgot that bit, or that's a new way to think about things, particularly the technical side of things. I really loved this book, and I really loved that it's upside down.
I felt like I shouldn't have written the book at first. I felt like a fraud because I'm not a writer, and there are so many people I thought in the paddock who would have done a much better job than me. And I actually phoned one of them and said, look, I've been asked to do this. Do you think I can? In terms of how will that be perceived as a non-written journalist writing a book? And I just wanted to check in with him and say, is this going to be frowned upon, or do you think I can pull it off? And he totally validated me and said, of course you can. And I'm ever so thankful for that conversation. Not only did it guide me, but it said so much about him. And the fact that he was totally accepting of this rookie writer, he having written so many books, and the fact that he thought I could do it. And I'm really proud of the book. I'm proud of not only because of the recovery, but I'm proud of the fact that it is genuinely a well-written book that's both informative and entertaining. And, that's all I ever wanted to do. was entertain and inform and educate. And I think that's like the 3 pillars of the BBC, and it's a BBC book. So it works on a lot of levels.
What was your favorite thing that you learned whilst writing it? So obviously there were a lot of circumstances at play between your health and the very short deadline that you tried to get through. Whether F1 related or life related, what was your favorite takeaway from the process of putting the book together?
My God, that's such a big question. I don't really know. I think I'm most proud of the "Did you know" sections.
I was going to say they were my favourite bit. The one that sticks to me is the fact that an F1 wheel nut can cost £1,000.
It's all of those little facts I was fascinated by, and they're just things that you pick up along the way, but actually they're what makes your knowledge or what makes that person stand out a little bit. And I just, the first one I wrote actually was when I wrote A for Australia, and the fact about no one's ever stood on the Australian Grand Prix who is from Australia when it comes to F1. And that was a genuine "did you know?" And I didn't think about it in terms of, oh, how many of these are there going to be and what should I include? I just thought, oh, A for Australia and "did you know?" And actually it's a real feature of the book. So I'm proud of that.
How did writing this book in particular, you did address this a little bit, but also I guess it was in a way re-engaging with the motorsports community while you were doing it. Did you find that it played a big role in your recovery, that it kind of bridged that gap back up again and it made you look forward to being part of the motorsport community again?
Absolutely. I missed the motorsport community so much, and I just, this was the perfect thing for me to do at the time. It was a way of me sharing some great anecdotes and thinking back and remembering all of these amazing things that have happened to me. And every now and then you need to stop to appreciate what you've done. And I hadn't really done that ever. So it was a chance for me to be able to share my experiences with maybe a new fan base that are into F1 and that have never experienced the things that I have. And just, it's such a great journey and such a great sport. I wanted to bring as many people as I could with me.
Did you find that it kind of evolved you back into another area of the sport? Did it change anything from the previous ways you were working before to who you've become now as a journalist, as a broadcaster? How has it changed your career, if you will, if it has?
I think it's given me more perspective, and it's also made me meet a lot more fans. And I think you can be quite insular when you're in the paddock. You don't have time to see anyone, friends or family, let alone anyone else. So this has been such a great opportunity to come to events, to meet you guys in the first place and be part of that motorsport community. I never felt like I was part of it before. I was reporting on it and I loved it and it was my job, but I was never fortunate enough to be able to watch a race. That wasn't my thing. I was reporting on it. So to feel like I was part of this community and be able to appreciate it and meet other people and have those chats just as a genuine fan, it's such a lovely thing to be able to do. And, F1 brings people together. I go back to my first memory. It was sharing that moment with a friend. And I think the community which has evolved now is such a healthy one. And I love being part of that.
Kind of coming towards the end here, Jenny. So just, do you have any advice for any aspiring motorsports journalists, anyone looking to get into not just F1 media, but, the whole FIA ladder is popular now?
I think start at the bottom and work your way up. Take time. Everyone feels like they have to be doing it right now. You know what? Building those blocks for the basis of your career will stand you in much better stead than racing ahead and going straight in at the top. I just think, know your stuff. Don't think you know it. Actually know it, because as a female, certainly in motorsport, you are going to have to prove yourself again and again. So know how the sport works, know the rules, know the right people, know your sport, know the history of it, know the future of it. Immerse yourself in the sport that you want to be part of and enjoy it. Just enjoy the journey along the way. You don't have to be the finished article right now. That's why you go in at a lower formula, or you go in at motocross, or wherever there's an opportunity. Use the opportunity to grow and learn and develop yourself as a journalist. And when you do get exposed at a higher level, there'll be no gaps in your knowledge because you've worked your way up and you've made the mistakes at a lower level. So when you get to the top level, you're obviously flawless, just like me.
Or at least you try to tell yourself you are.
Yeah.
So this is our final question. We tried to make it fun because we need to end on a lighter note than how we started in the first place.
Let's hope so. No pressure. Come on, Dan.
Who are your top favorite drivers of all time across any series, whether they're still driving or not? Who comes to mind when you think of your greatest of all times?
That's tough. I'm meant to be impartial because I work for the BBC. So I'm not really allowed to say anyone.
As a fan, you do not work for the BBC
easier.
in this context.
Other motorsport series are available.
Yeah, exactly. Travis Pastrana is amazing. He is just like a bouncing block of muscles that keeps coming back again and again. He's survived so many crashes, accidents, things like that. He shouldn't be here, but he is, and it's great that he is because he's amazing. So he sticks out in my mind. Jenson Button, because obviously I was there for his first win, or my first win, seeing him at a race. That's the wrong way around. Jenson Button, because my first race was his win in Canada. My second race, incidentally, was his win in Hungary in the wet. And at that point he said, just keep on coming back.
Turn
and I'll
up,
keep
Jenny. Turn up.
Yeah. So that was good. Lewis, Fernando, Sebastian, Michael Schumacher. I mean, the list goes on. And if I go back, James Hunt, Ayrton Senna. I'm not old enough to have met those people. I'd just like to clarify. I'm not Gen A this time round, but you know, they're such legendary characters.
Yeah.
And I mean, I wish I'd met both of them.
James Hunt is a phenomenal commentator as well. His commentary on those races is amazingly funny. Yeah. So I don't think he fully cared.
Yeah.
No, I mean, no, he was drunk most of the time anyway.
I do love how racing drivers just go into the broadcaster part of the series immediately, typically right after they finish their racing careers. Seeing Jenson Button now being one of the broadcasters, seeing Nico Rosberg. My personal favorite moments are when he has to interview Lewis post-race. It warms my little heart to see that.
The besties. Cool.
Yeah. And I think I also have to say what Susie Wolff has done for females in motorsport is unbelievable. And I take my hat off to her. Not only did she achieve so much as a racer and a racing driver with Williams, but then to leave and charge towards that light of a beacon for women in motorsport. And what she continues to do. And if the rumours are right, I wish that they were. And if she does run for FIA president, what a change that would make for the better.
Oh, incredible.
In terms of bringing people into the sport and championing people, not just men. And yeah, she is incredible. And we're very fortunate to have her.
We love it. We're huge fans of the F1 Academy here. So we are big Susie stans. Thank you, Jenny.
You are more than welcome. There are so many things I would love to chat about, from Abby Pulling and her achievements.
Love her.
You know, how females in motorsport have developed. But that will be for another day and another time.
We finally got a female race engineer.
We do.
Exactly.
And Esty Bestie could not be a better pick for. Yeah. He's definitely going to listen.
Yeah.
We do.
But it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on and for having my upside down book.
It's an honour in both regards.
It is.
Genuinely. We have been so excited about this since we agreed it. I think every time I've seen Dan, it's like, we're interviewing Jennie Gow. We're interviewing Jennie Gow.
We're doing this.
It's done. I hope it didn't disappoint.
I told my mum,
No,
and my mum was so overexcited. So hello, mum. Hello, Claire.
I love that. Hi, Mom.
Well, that's the end of our special episode. Thanks for tuning in. This was a mini episode with our special guest, Jennie Gow. We hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and follow us on Instagram and TikTok at the Polite Notice Pod. See you next time. Bye-bye.
This has been a special episode of a Polite Notice podcast, a Polite Notice production hosted by Daniela Stam, Enna Cheshire, Imane Morabet, Rebecca Jones and Savannah Lenz. Special guest Jennie Gow. Research by Eleana Cheshire and audio editing and technical production by Alex Vasile.
I'm blue.